That was really never my position. My position always was that it's got to be Congress's responsibility to impeach and then try and then convict someone who's actually engaged in what you could view as the most heinous constitutional sin of trying to overthrow an election according to the constitutional processes of your own government.
Right.
So I didn't buy it when McConnell said, well, yes, Donald Trump is personally and ethically, morally responsible for everything that happened, but we didn't have jurisdiction.
Donald Trump just announced the latest of his dangerous MAGA nominees to fill out his administration in Kash Patel to head up the FBI. And it's another example of how Donald Trump is taking this fake narrative about having an overwhelming mandate, having won a landslide victory, which is not actually the case. And he's taking that narrative that MAGA is pushing to say that he can appoint anyone who he wants to fill his administration. And that includes the most dangerous MAGA extremist. And Kash Patel is just that someone who would be incredibly scary as the head of the FBI. And Jamie Raskin did such a great job calling that out in an incredible takedown of both Kash Patel and Donald Trump that I want to check out. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really means the world to me. Now let's get into Jamie Raskin.
Is the top Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, Congressman Jamie Raskin. Congressman, thanks very much for being here. Congratulations on your reelection.
Thank you very much.
It's wonderful to have you here. I want to start with your reaction to the news out of Mar-a-Lago overnight that Donald Trump intends to nominate Kash Patel to be the FBI director, which of course implies that he's going to fire the sitting FBI director, Christopher Wray. What is your reaction? What are the implications?
Well, Christopher Wray, of course, is a Republican, appointed by a Republican, as he has said, but apparently has demonstrated too much independence and objectivity in the job for Donald Trump, who wants much more of a personal loyalist in the position, and that's why he's gone to Kash Patel.
Do you think there are any issues inside the FBI around politicization, as many who voted for Donald Trump seem to say?
Well, undoubtedly, if you look at it historically, for example, during the COINTELPRO period, the FBI really was weaponized against Dr. King and the civil rights movement and the peace movement. There was, decades of the FBI being basically used as a political instrument. There's an interesting book about that, about J. Edgar Hoover by Beverly Gage, and people can look at. And so I haven't seen what the proof is that the FBI has been weaponized against a political party or the Department of Justice. Of course, this Department of Justice has brought charges against a Democratic U.S. Senator in New Jersey, a Democratic congressman in Texas. And so some people just seem to think that it should go only in one direction. And if it doesn't, then somehow it's politicized. And I think that's what they mean when they talk about politicization in the deep state. The deep state, nobody's ever defined it. Apparently, it just means anybody who doesn't do the will of Donald Trump.
Congressman, you, of course, worked so hard around issues related to January 6th. And, of course, the special counsel is now winding down the federal cases against Donald Trump. And I just want to read you this. You wrote this in the January 6th committee final report. You said, if President Trump and the associates who assisted him in an effort to overturn the lawful outcome of the 2020 election are not ultimately held accountable under the law, their behavior may become a precedent, an invitation to danger for future elections. A failure to hold them accountable now may ultimately lead to future unlawful efforts to overturn our elections, thereby threatening the security and viability of our republic. In the end, Donald Trump is not going to face accountability via the Justice Department for January 6th. Do you blame Attorney General Merrick Garland for that?
Well, just go back to the accountability point for a second. Donald Trump was impeached for his role in inciting a violent insurrection against the Constitution. And the January 6th committee did, I think, a very good job of spelling out the plan as much as we could get people to testify, as much as we could gather the evidence to topple Joe Biden's victory in the election. He'd won by more than 7 million votes, 306 to 232 in the Electoral College. And this was clearly an effort to overthrow the result and to hang Mike Pence and to drive the House and Senate out of the chambers. So that is established. And so there has been some historical accountability. There's been some congressional accountability. Of course, the Senate voted 57 to 43 in the most sweeping bipartisan vote in American history to convict an impeached president. He did beat the constitutional spread of 2/3. We needed 67 votes, but I wouldn't say there hasn't been any accountability.
But criminally speaking?
Well, criminally speaking, yeah. And look, I don't want to get into a game of second guessing what's happened here or there. And a lot of those matters are still before the courts. There have been more than 1,200 criminal prosecutions of people who assaulted federal officers.
I mean, did Merrick Garland wait too long?
Well, look, I remember when Mitch McConnell got up at the end of the Senate trial.
Yeah,
and
I remember that too.
And he repeatedly said, well, this is not the only way to rectify a situation with a president who's engaged in such action. He said there can also be criminal prosecution. Mm-hmm. That was really never my position. My position always was that it's got to be Congress's responsibility to impeach and then try and then convict someone who's actually engaged in what you could view as the most heinous constitutional sin of trying to overthrow an election according to the constitutional processes of your own government.
Right.
So I didn't buy it when McConnell said, well, yes, Donald Trump is personally and ethically, morally responsible for everything that happened, but we didn't have jurisdiction to try a former president. That cut against more than 2 centuries of precedent, and we had decided that issue as a matter of law on the very first day of the trial.
Fair enough. We've been talking about the politicization or lack thereof inside the Department of Justice, and Hunter Biden, who is now facing sentencing in a tax case and a gun case, his lawyers are arguing that part of why he's facing this is because these charges wouldn't have been pursued against someone who wasn't the president's son. Do you think President Biden should pardon Hunter Biden?
So let's go back to first the selective prosecution point. And there is a defense called selective prosecution if you can show that the government has a set of cases that all look alike, but they pick one person out to prosecute based on, say, a political animus towards the person, and which essentially is the claim that Donald Trump has been making about why he was targeted. And so there are lots of claims of political prosecution and political
And was Hunter politically prosecuted?
I mean, obviously that's a judicial point, and you've got to look at what the evidence is, and I don't know enough
so should the president pardon him?
I mean, again, that is a unilateral executive power that...
and should he use it?
Well, the power exists for the president to show mercy for people who have committed crimes and either suffered some kind of injustice in the process or
And do you think Hunter has? I mean, should the president
is disproportionate? I mean, I haven't even remotely looked at it. I mean, I know basically what the alleged crimes were. One was when he was filling out a form about whether he was...
I get the sense you're not going to answer my question.
Yeah, I don't know the answer now. I'm not in the pardon office, but it does give me the opportunity to say there's a process for doing this with a pardon attorney, and they shouldn't be passed out like Oreo cookies.
Like Oreo cookies. Okay, fair enough. So before I let you go, I need to ask you, do you think Jerry Nadler is the right person to lead the Democrats on the House Judiciary Committee, or are you interested in stepping up for the job?
Oh, Jerry Nadler is a great leader and a great friend of mine, and obviously we're just going through discussions within our caucus about who's going to be in different positions at this point. But I have great
Are you ruling it out?
And admiration for Jerry Nadler. I really do.
Are you ruling out possibly saying, hey, I would like to be ranking member on Judiciary?
We're just getting back into that now as we form the Steering and Policy Committee. So I'm not ruling anything out at this point, and we're engaged in conversations, all with the purpose of creating a strategic focus and capacity within the Democratic members of the House so that we're going to be a really effective and muscular opposition. We've got to win the House back in 2026.
All right, Congressman Jamie Raskin, so grateful to have you. Looking forward to seeing what you do next.
Thank you very much.
Hope you'll come back soon. Thank you.
Donald Trump spent his entire campaign talking about how President Biden, lying about how President Biden was going after his political enemy, and Donald Trump saying that he was weaponizing the DOJ, weaponizing the government against Trump. He was acting in such a corrupt fashion when that was only true of Donald Trump, who used his corrupt justices on the Supreme Court, the corrupt judges he appointed to delay his trials. That was the only weaponization we saw. But now Donald Trump is turning around and saying, no, I'm actually going to do the thing that I accused Joe Biden of doing, using the government to attack my enemies. Now, like I said earlier, Donald Trump says that he won this overwhelming victory. It wasn't one of the smallest popular vote margins in history, and now he's using that as an excuse to go after his enemies, but that's not what anyone elected Donald Trump to do. Just listen to Jamie Raskin and make that point right here.
Trump was not elected with any kind of positive agenda for the country. I mean, his most detailed agenda was around immigration and deportation. They are already starting to try to alter laws around the country to build in a political advantage, like in North Carolina, where the Democrats swept a lot of the state constitutional offices. The outgoing Republican state legislature is trying to entrench Republican power, taking powers away from the governor and giving them to the state auditor. And I view what I think we're about to see at the Department of Justice in exactly the same light. They want to go back to all of the lies about 2020, which have been debunked ad nauseum. They want to install people who are going to prosecute the prosecutors, as Bondi has said. And it looks like a completely different kind of institution from the one that has been built up through both Democratic and Republican administrations in the past. So it looks to me like a recipe for nonstop political warfare.
These Trump appointees have one thing in mind, and it's their fealty to Donald Trump, and they will use their power to go after his enemies. There has not been one bit of discussion about the price of eggs or gas or other goods. Since Donald Trump was elected, the only conversation that Republicans have been having about prices is with regards to tariffs, which make prices go up. They're not doing anything that they were supposedly elected to do, and that's not shocking. But it has to be pointed out that Republicans are only focused on politically persecuting their enemies and doing nothing else. This is what we said. This is what we knew would happen, and we have to continue to talk about it. And that's what we're going to do on this show every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, you can leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around at the end, you can drop blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.